All right, I'm going to go ahead and start recording. Let me also start the projection. It doesn't look like I'm okay. We're going to come back to this transformation exercise, but to begin, what we're going to do is start our own file today. And what we're going to learn how to do with this file is how to create shapes, change their color, and then do pretty quick transformations. So with that, let's all make sure we're starting with the same kind of file. So let's go up to File, New, or Control N, and let's go ahead and do a print, tabloid, and I'm going to flip it landscape. So I'll leave this up here for just a bit. So I clicked on print up here, I went to tabloid, and then I flipped it landscape. Okay. Those are the only settings I'm changing for now. And then as soon as you get that, go ahead and click on create so I know that you're ready to go. And then I'll close the screen too in just a minute. Okay, I think most people have that. If you need me to go back, let me know. But this is kind of what we're starting on working with. In our layer manager, we have a background layer. And what we want to do to that background layer is actually add, sorry, not on the background layer, but in Photoshop, we can add, I'm so sorry guys. We can easily add shapes, and the key for the shape tool is actually U. So if you click on U, hopefully you can see my cursor where it highlighted. And go ahead and right click on that. Go ahead and right click on that and see the different kinds of shapes you can make too. So it's not just a rectangle, but when I right clicked, you see that we've also got rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, etc. For now, we're just going to do the rectangle. It really leads into the assignment that we're working on today, but in the future, if you are creating any sort of other print work and you need shapes, this is probably the best place to find them. Okay, so if I go to rectangle tool, my color right now is set to red. Let me reset it to black and white because I'm pretty sure that's where yours is at right now. And freehand, just go ahead and draw whatever type of rectangle you want. And by default, it kicks you out into this properties menu, or at least it should.
Sorry, I crashed. Could you go back like 2 steps?
Yeah, let me go back to the opening maybe?
I have the file, and then did you go to rectangle?
Did you make a new file?
Yeah.
Okay, so once you get a new file, and actually, Steph, did I lose you too, Stephanie? Okay.
Yeah.
I think you just need to click on create and then you're good to go.
Because you did landscape, and then did you do something else?
Nope,
Or is
that was it. And remember, today's going to be hard for me, so yell at me if I lose you. So that was perfect, Soren. Stephanie, learn from that. Yell at me. You're paying me to be here. No, I mean, if we could learn by watching, that would be amazing. I'd like watch gymnasts and be like, got it, I'm going to go do that. I mean, in my brain. So I opened up this new file, and the thing that I was trying to point out is I didn't create a new layer. I just hit U and it takes me to the shapes menu. I also right click just to show that there's more than one shape. And then I also reset my colors to be black and white. They were at red before, so just to be the same. And then what I'm going to do is click and drag. And again, you can draw any type of rectangle or square that you want. And by default, it goes to this properties menu that tells you about your shape. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I think the only helpful thing is really this fill. So it's here and here. That essentially means what color is your square. Now the next one we draw, we're going to work on the fill. Okay? So on that note, go ahead and draw one more for me. Okay, and then click on fill up here, and you can see there's some standard colors here, or you can click on this rainbow and go to the color picker. So this rainbow here takes you to the color picker where you can go look at all the spectrum of colors. Just make it a different, unique color. It doesn't matter which one you pick. What we're really looking for is 2 distinct colors. And then when you're done, hit V so that we stop drawing rectangles or changing colors. Everybody got those okay? Yeah? Are you ready for the next step? I'm gonna wait a minute. You guys are writing. I'll wait for you to stop writing. So what we're gonna do next, we're gonna do this next part using the black shape. So in fact, before we get too far, let's name the black one shape A, and let's name your second one, whatever it might be, shape B. No pun intended. So what we just did, just by naming the files, that's like our first level of layer organization, right? So if you're looking at that rubric and you see layer organization, make sure that you do at least that, okay? Now under shape A, I'm going to take over for a minute and show you what we're going to be working on today before we hop into the exercise. So we're all familiar with Control T, right? It takes us into the transformations, and typically we just use Control T to kind of resize things like this. What we're moving on to today, and then also later in the semester, is we're using Control T to go to a right click, and we can also skew. I'm going to go to right click. We can also distort. I'm going to right click again. We can do perspective. Now the one that we won't be working on today is warp. Okay, let's leave warp off for now. That brings curves into it and it gets kind of crazy. So we'll leave warp off for now. So what I'd like you guys to do now, I'm going to hit escape to kind of reset it. Go ahead and hit Control T, and using your right click, use any one of the skew, distort, or perspective to change the shape of our rectangle. Don't invert it like this. I mean, you can, but we're still looking for something with 4 corners, really. Okay, and then when you're done, to accept it, go ahead and hit enter, and that'll apply the transformation onto your shape. What this exercise is going to teach us is how we can start using advanced transformations to match different objects to one another. So what I'd like you guys to try next, without a lot of instruction, is I'm pretty sure for this next part, in my last class, so if I'm on shape A, you can see on my layer manager I'm on shape A, I'm able to just click on shape B and then transform it, but I had some students that actually had to come over to their layer menu and click on it. I'm not sure why. Just watch out for that. And what I'd like you to do now is go back into your transformation, so Control T, and use those same skew, distort, perspective to try and get this shape matched up with the shape below it. So in our case, shape B should now be distorted and transformed to match shape A. Got it? I'm going to pause and give you guys some time to play with that. If you feel comfortable with that exercise that we just did and those concepts, go ahead and hop into this transformation exercise. Now, I will say that there is a little bit of a curveball in this one, so take your time, think about layer organization before you jump into it. I'd like you guys to try to figure it out on your own, all right? So I'm going to give you guys a chunk of class time to get through this next part. I'm going to show you guys another quick trick that might help you see the shapes on top of one another. Sometimes you get so close that it's hard to see what's underneath. So for example, on shape B, when I click on it, am I still transmitting? Yeah, okay. Do you see how there is something called opacity? You can, when you click on the word opacity, you can actually just automatically start sliding your mouse up and down when you click. So let me show you that one more time. I know it's hard to see with my cursor, but when I put my cursor there, it turns into a finger and it has arrows on both sides. And as long as you see that, you can click and kind of drag up and down. The other thing you can do is you can actually come to the pull down menu and slide it this way. So again, you can use that so you can really see the two objects on top of one another, if that helps while you're working with this. I would like some feedback though, as you guys are working on it. Does it still seem pretty straightforward? Are you guys able to line the objects with one another? Good. Okay. I'm hoping it should be pretty effortless, just something you're trying to get the hang of. What I would like, when you guys are done, I'd actually like you guys just to save transformation PSD and then just turn it back into the exercise. Typically I give you guys a week for those, but this particular one I'd like to get before the end of class. So when you're done, submit that. And then in just a few minutes, I am going to give you guys the next exercises and assignments for today. All right, I'm gonna jump in with a couple more announcements and then where you guys are going from here. Now that you've had a couple minutes to work on this, I want to make sure that these next assignments will make sense to you. So let me start talking about your first assignment. It's called the billboard transformation. And what it is, it's going to combine several different things. One of them, we haven't talked about the text yet, but we'll do an example of that in just one moment. In a nutshell, what you guys will be doing is taking these 3 different billboard images that I've provided you, and you'll be making your own billboard. And so the images that I've sent you, they are kind of awkward, but honestly, when you Google billboard, not a lot of great things come up. So they're like the most normal high-resolution billboards I can find. So the point of this is that you're going to mask the existing billboard that's there, and then you're going to find images and text to replace that billboard with your own message that you want to convey. And really you can do anything you want, but I am looking for something, I call it like uplifting and architectural, so something rooted in design. But you really can do anything you want, and I'll just be looking mainly at your transformations to make sure everything looks normal. So make sure that you've carefully masked the image to replace the existing billboard image, and then carefully transformed the image to replace the existing billboard image. And then last is the carefully transformed text. So text should be legible and easy to read. And then here I've also put that your PSD file should be organized professionally. And so that means that you have given your layers the correct names. If you need to group things, you've grouped them. That's what I'm looking for. And then for each billboard, they're worth 5 points each, and I'm going to look at everything as a whole. And so if you've met all of the requirements and everything looks perfect, it's going to be a 5. And so that includes the masking, the transformation, and the text, and then down from there. That's what I'll be looking at here. Other than the text, any questions on that? No? Okay. Let me go to the next one. Now this one's going to be a little bit different. This actually is more in line with what we did last week. You might not need to do the advanced transformations that we're doing today. Let me just point out that I'm saying I'm opening this assignment early so you can bring it to work on the 3 objects you want to bring into the scene. And then when we meet next week, I want this file kind of ready to go, similar to what your files were this week. And then we're going to be adding one more layer on top of it. Does that make sense? So really in the rubric, it says here, if you did the layer adjustment level, you won't be doing that before next week. You're going to be doing that essentially in class next week. Okay, so just come with this file ready. And what we're going to be doing is I'm giving you guys this image of the Salt Lake Library. And the reason why we're using this particular image is it has pretty unique lighting conditions. We've got really bright areas, and then towards the back we've got darker areas, and then a little bit darker over here too. And what I want you guys to do to start is find 3 objects that you're going to mask and transform into the scene. You know, try to make it so they don't look photoshopped. And they can really be any 3 objects that you want. And then once you have that done, next week in class, we're going to add another layer onto our Photoshop skills. And that's going to be called levels. And levels is really similar to brightness and contrast. And what it does is it changes the brightness and contrast of your image essentially so that it looks less photoshopped. So over here in this really bright area, if you have an object that's really dark that you masked and brought in, you can use levels to lighten that up and really make it look like it's supposed to be part of that scene. The other thing that we'll be doing, we're also going to be taking the art space, the Vila Savoy project, and the Salk Institute that you guys have been working on, and we're also going to be adding the levels to those as well. Okay, so we're going to be kind of doing 4 things next week, and I want all of those 4 files to be ready for class next week. The other 3 are done. This will be the only new one. Okay, so this week your exercise in class will be to do the shapes that you're working on right now. The second thing, in no particular order, will be to start masking and transforming the objects for your library. Again, those are 3. And here I put extra credit, insert yourself into the image. So if you want to sneak yourself in there for extra credit, you can. And then the last thing, this is the 3rd thing, the billboard transformation. Okay, that's what we'll be working on to next week. And this is due at the beginning of class next week. This should just be done. The levels one we'll continue working on. Any questions about those 3 assignments? Okay. I said that I did have a couple announcements, so I'm going to steal your attention for just a sec on those. The first thing that I wanted to mention is that I really want you guys to start reading the rubric. This one's really straightforward. It just says Billboard 1, 2, and 3, right? But if I go back to other assignments, the last couple things I graded were a little bit painful to grade only because there were lots of things people missed. Like for example, Object 1, make sure you do all of these things. Grouping, linking, transformation scale, right? And then things just as simple as turning in the PSD or JPEG, make sure you do those. I think one of the biggest hits people took last week is they wouldn't insert objects that had been masked. Like they do the whole scene with maybe like the background of Utah and the Vila Savoy, but like no other objects. I can't remember which assignment it was on. So I just ask that from here on out, when you guys do your assignments, just read through the rubrics carefully, just to make sure you're not missing out on like an easy 5 points by turning in the different file types. Okay? All right. And then last but not least, I already mentioned this at the beginning of class. If you are interested in joining, come see me now and I'll get you guys signed up. And Thursday, SaltCon, 3 o'clock. We're meeting at the Gateway, so I hope to see you guys there. Okay. And the text options in Photoshop, they are, you can hit T, and I'm sorry you can't see this on my screen, but on your screen you should see it change to a like a text cursor. And the important thing to do is to not click and start typing, because that just makes it so it's a line that goes on forever. But rather than doing it that way, you can see it makes its own layer automatically. You don't need to create one. What I'd rather have you guys do is hit T for text and then click and drag like you're drawing a rectangle. And that actually creates a text frame for your text to go into, so you can format it more. Now you can center it, you can make it left or right justified. There's just a lot more options. So again, when you're putting in text, hit T for text and then click and drag to make a text box. Now by default, what it's doing is putting in some text for you so that you get a preview of the size and font that it is. If you want to get rid of this, you can easily hit backspace. And then, for example, I'm just going to type my name. And then everything after this point is really just like Microsoft Word or any other program. So, for example, you can come up here and change your font. Just grab something nice and simple. You can change the size. You know, you can adjust that as necessary. And again, you can do all of your text formatting in here. Now, just know that in our class, we typically only add text in InDesign. So in Photoshop, you shouldn't have to add that much text. For this particular assignment, we do want to add it because we're adding it to our billboard. But as far as like labeling projects and creating posters, all of that should be done in InDesign. This is part of the graphic that we're making, so it's okay to use it. And then here you can click on the fill, again here or here, and change the color. So now it's red. And one thing to remember is it always has to be highlighted for the effects to take place. Again, similar to Microsoft Word. So if it's highlighted, I can change the color. If it's not highlighted and I make it like a blue color, it kind of ignores me. So make sure to highlight it first before you make any changes. So that includes changing the font, changing the size, any one of those things. Now, for our billboard assignment, I don't think that you'll need this, but you can click on this little button that creates warped text. And again, I don't think you'll need it because you're already going to be changing its shape. I think it might just get a little too crazy if you try and do both. But again, if you're ever looking for something like this, it does exist. And you can change some of its settings here. I'm going to hit cancel on that. And then to be done with my text editor, if you hit enter, it just keeps putting text in. But if you hit Control Enter or click off of it, that's when it gets you out of the text manager. And just like any other object, if you hit Control T, do you see how you can resize your text? Okay. And for those of you with text on your screen right now, right-click for me and tell me what's a little bit different about the transformations. Can you do all of them? No. So with text, you're limited to transformations. Okay. There is a way around this though. So let me show you one more time. If I do Control T, we are limited to essentially scale, rotate, and skew. But distort and perspective are probably the two that we use the most. Well, for me, I mostly use distort. It gives me the most control over my shapes. Now for this next part, I want to make sure everybody has text to play with, just to make sure you can do it on your own. Do you guys want me to pause the lecture for a minute so you guys can write your names and get it on your screen? Okay, I'm going to pause for... Okay, so if you have your name, what I want you guys to do, I always make a duplicate copy of this. So again, I'm going to drag my name down to the new layer, and Maddie, you can still follow along with this. Your name will just be running vertically. So go ahead and make a copy. And the reason why we're making a copy is we are about to take our editable text layer and turn it into an object. So it looks like a billboard or a shape. So what I mean by that is, see how right now it recognizes that it has a T, so it's a text layer, right? Now, the one above, my copy, you can right-click on your copy, and I want you to go down to where it says rasterize type. So I'll hang out here so you guys can see it. Okay. And then it kind of converts it to look like any other layer. And Maddie, I think this might be the button you're looking for, but I could be wrong. No, never mind. I'll look at it later. And these are right on top of one another, so I'm going to hit V so I can move one of them down. And now you can see that if I hit T for text, I can still edit the one that's text. But if I try to click on this one above, the copy, so if I hit T for text, do you see that it just adds another text box for me? It doesn't actually let me edit it. Is that what you guys found too? Okay. So tell me again, what does rasterizing do to your text? Is it still text if it's been rasterized? It isn't. No. Now it's an object just like any other of your images. Okay. What it does allow us to do is to hit Control T, and now you have distort and perspective. Because remember, Photoshop thinks it's just like any other image. It's no longer text. And the reason why I make a copy is if you did all of these transformations and then you realize that you spelled something wrong, you'd have to start from the very beginning. Like you'd have to find the color, find the font, set the size. But by making a copy, it makes it so you have something editable really close. So it's a nice, like, foolproof way of being able to come back and edit it later if you need to. Excuse me. So again, kind of from the top, T allows you guys to make text. Should you guys just click on your screen and start typing? No. Make sure to click and drag to create a text box so you have control over how big of an area you want to put your text. And then that also gives you a lot more editing control, centering, justifying. If you just click and start typing, it's essentially just one long line. I wish it didn't do it that way, but it does. Now, what's one key thing you have to do to your text before you make any changes? So if I wanted to change the size or the color, what do I need to do first? Yep, you have to highlight it first. Good. Can you transform text? Yeah, but you can't do distort or perspective. And especially in the billboard assignment, we want to be able to do distort and perspective, right? So there's two things I want you to do in order to make it so that you can distort it or put perspective onto it. What's the first thing before you start editing? Yep, make a copy of it. And then once you have a copy of your text, what's the next thing that you should do? Yeah, right click and go to rasterize, and that takes your text and essentially turns it into an object. And then from there you can distort, anything like that. David, you throw up your hand.
Is there a way to make it not pixelated?
As soon as you hit enter, it'll look normal. While it's working, it's a lot of work for your graphic card, so it might look a little bit fuzzy, but as soon as you hit enter, it should fix it for you. Any other questions on this? I feel like I'm not being as thorough as I usually am, so my apologies for that. I didn't want to miss today though, just because I only see you guys once a week. So let's make sure that you guys get through the transformation exercise, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is go through the billboard exercise. So each one of you will be doing 3 billboards with a mix of different backgrounds, objects, and text. That's totally up to you. And then the last thing is prepping the library file for our exercise next week. Okay? And we're going to be learning about levels in class. That's what I'll be looking for. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and post it.